Okay, so today we're talking about webinar CTAs. These are quite simple yet powerful little tools that will help your webinars convert much better. So let's go through a bit about what they are, how they work, and go through some examples so that you can apply them to your own webinars. Okay, so to jump in, a webinar CTA or call to action is a prompt that pushes your audience member to do something, right? So it might be to buy, to download, or provide additional information so that you can help them take some action. So what do these look like? Well, they could be, let's say, a register button on your landing page, or book a demo during the session, or even something softer like, join our community. So to show that in action, here we're using, contrast to run our webinars, but you can put in some information and push a CTA on top, pushing people to book a demo. So this happens during the session. CTAs don't just have to happen during a webinar. So here, if we look at a webinar ad that might come on, LinkedIn or something like that, you can see that there's a CTA to claim your spot. These can also happen after the webinar with things like, surveys and follow-up emails, which we'll get to in just a sec. So that's what a webinar CTA looks like. But why are they important? Why should you be thinking about these when you run your webinar? Well, if you think about a webinar, it's actually quite a special moment, and it's kind of rare. So it's 30 to 60 minutes where you have your customers or community actively thinking about your brand and focused on you, right? They're not doing other stuff. They're not answering emails, doing other parts of their job. They're thinking about your brand, and that's quite powerful. The thing is, attention fades fast. So once the session's over, they're going to go back to whatever email they have to answer, go to their next meeting, and you're going to be an afterthought. So what a webinar CTA does is it turns that moment that you have attention into an action. And this is important because, if you think about running a webinar, you're doing it for some goal, right? It might be thought leadership, trying to get more people to understand your brand. It could be to generate leads, maybe an MQL, SQL. It could be to book a demo, so actually getting them to convert, or upgrade to a new plan, or sign up for your product, or join your community like we spoke about. But regardless of what your goal is, a CTA helps you accomplish your goal, right? It helps you give some value to your user so then that you can ultimately convert them. And that's great because you're not just running a webinar for fun, you're doing it to try and deliver value to your audience and your viewers so that ultimately you can get some value as well. Let's talk about some examples. And I think the best way to look at these is to break them up into different types. The way I like to do this is think about it as a funnel, so top, middle, and bottom, and then another category for post-webinar. So let's take a look at these different types and go through. So the first is our top of funnel webinar CTA examples. So here we might have a landing page for an on-demand with a CTA to watch. The important thing, though, to think about with webinar CTAs, I think a mistake people make is they think of it as a button with some text, but it doesn't always have to be that. Here you can see that we also have a play button. Your user knows if they click that play button, they're going to get to see a video. So yeah, maybe they're going to trade their email to watch that, right? So it doesn't just have to be a button. And here's another example. So this is the one we saw with the ad. So this would be claim your spot before a webinar. But there's other things we can think about here. So save my seat, that register button, join live, register free if you're thinking about like ads and value, reserve my spot, watch now. So all of these things, top of funnel, pre-webinar. It's worth noting that just because it's top of funnel doesn't mean it's before a webinar happens. So here you have a landing page to watch on demand. So the webinar has already happened. It's just top of the funnel for them going through your webinar flow. But if we have another landing page, maybe it will say register if the event hasn't happened yet. Now let's look a little bit at some mid-funnel CTA examples. So these are usually happening during a webinar. So here we might have, a CTA to go to site, maybe to connect with someone on LinkedIn. So to connect with the speaker, we see this more and more. And then here's another example of a webinar that's not that traditional button plus text, yet still very powerful. So here we have a poll asking which design topic would you like to learn about. So this is really cool because for this specific webinar with this specific audience, you can ask them what topic they care about. then you can use this in a couple different ways. So you could actually, change the content of your session. You might say, okay, people are interested in this. This is what we're going to talk about today, which would make it much more powerful and valuable for them, which should lead to better conversion. But regardless of that, you're still learning, okay, for my audience, here's a problem or topic that they're thinking about or focused on that you can use for follow-up later, or use for maybe additional content, another webinar down the line. So again, think of CTAs in different ways. Try and expand how you're thinking about them past buttons. Okay, other things that we might see mid-funnel. So we have download, maybe some collateral, visit a site, read a case study, explore a feature, maybe that you did a product demo and now you want to push them to actually try it. Get a template, connect on LinkedIn, pick topic for Pulse. Okay, now let's go to bottom of funnel CTA examples. So I think this is maybe what most people would think about when they think about a webinar CTA, these like very traditional conversion actions. So here we have, again, using contrast to run our webinars, we have a CTA to book a demo. Other things here might be, start a free trial, sign up, upgrade now, request pricing, talk to sales, right? So these very like definitive converting actions. I think it's also worth noting that, if you do want to run a webinar and use webinar CTAs, most modern platforms will help you easily set these up and use them during your webinars. So again, here we're using Contrast. On Contrast, when you create a webinar, we give you a webinar studio, the Contrast Studio. This allows you to, easily run and manage your webinar, but also, have a lot of engagement and do things like, CTAs. So here you just put in what you want your CTA to be and the link, and then you can make that pop up over the video for the viewers, and everything will be tracked so that you can follow up on it later. But most platforms will help you do that. Okay, let's look at the final example. So this would be post-webinar CTAs. So this is things like, do my survey. This is common to be seen in emails. So here we'd have access my slides. So that's a bit of collateral. You could have on demand here. So if we go to our list of examples, watch on demand, view replay, take a survey, join our community, subscribe to our blog, even join our next webinar, right? If you have people thinking about you, they're interested, push them to join your next session so that you can keep building that relationship. Okay, so those are the different types and examples that you can start to use. Maybe the last thing we'll do is give you some tips on how to make sure that when you set these up, that they're the most high performing they can be. Good news, this is really easy. So I have a little bit of a framework here. The first thing you're going to want to do is think about having a specific action so that when the user clicks the CTA, they know what the outcome is. So the way to do this is what you want is a really strong verb followed by some result or some understanding for them. So here we would have just a strong verb, register, right? Here we would have get the template, so a verb plus the result. Here we would have save my seat if you want to give some like ownership to it. If you want to create urgency, you could say register now. If you wanted to make it easy, book a 15-minute call versus book a demo, right? You can see that those are different. But regardless what you chose there, verb plus strong signal of outcome. Okay, then let's talk about some things that you don't want to do. Just make sure that the timing makes sense when you do your CTA. If someone just joined your webinar, don't send them a CTA to book a demo. They haven't heard from you, you haven't spoken to them. That's going to be a little bit used car salesy. So just make sure that the timing, makes sense. And then with that, some other things to avoid. So this is a little, reiteration here, but anything that's like a vague CTA, click here. Okay, if I click here, what happens? No one's going to do that, right? You want that verb plus the outcome. Another thing to avoid is having just too many CTAs. This will make it saturated. People are going to be less likely to click. So make sure that you time, 3 to 4 of those at the right moment in a 60-minute webinar. The other thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that if you are running webinar CTAs during your session, make sure that you understand how to track them. You are doing this to actually drive an outcome, and this is where value lives. So just make sure that you understand. Most platforms will help you easily do that, but I would just say make sure, let's say if you're using a CRM, make sure that data is being pushed there. So here's an example of Contrast pushing webinar CTA data to HubSpot. So you can see all the CTA clicks, poll answers, even questions that they ask will be in HubSpot so your team can easily follow up. And then the other thing to think about, we said that if you run a CTA, it's not just about driving value. So here we have a poll result. So we learned a little bit about our audience. Maybe we can do some follow-up on that, but we can also use this poll as content to repurpose our webinar into other types of content. So again, CTAs are really powerful. You definitely want to add them to your webinars. Just make sure that you follow the framework. Think about having a clear action and outcome for the user so that you can drive value for them and get the outcome that you need to drive value for your webinars. So yeah, good luck.